Piano technique is probably the most discussed topic among piano teachers, especially when we talk about beginning students. Every instructor is concerned about their students' muscle tension, stiffness of joints, poor piano posture, hand position, as well as weak and collapsed fingers. These concerns are addressed in many ways, including multiple method books, experimental approaches, creation of countless Facebook groups, and yet too many teachers still find themselves frustrated with failed expectations and lack of the results. I consider myself lucky to study and experience different approaches to piano technique firsthand while studying in Ukraine and working there for 13 years, then during my years of teaching in the United States, and most recently teaching in college and training piano teachers in China. For the past 4 years, I've been doing that. It became clear. It became clear to me that the approaches to piano technique in different parts of the world are very diverse, even though they derive from the same source. And you see all these countries on the slide. These are where I had workshops with teachers. I traveled there and gave virtual workshops. And in every country, in every part of the world, approach to teaching is different. And it was really puzzling me, and I was wondering why. And I started very extensive research about 15 years ago. So, what is the source of piano technique? Every musician knows that it evolved from the technique developed for early keyboard instruments such as harpsichord and clavichord. Technique required for playing these instruments focused on the independence of isolated fingers that needed to be raised above the keys and then quickly strike them. Because the keys of these instruments were very light and pieces written for them were very short, an isolated finger action approach was sufficient enough for graceful and ornamental style of Baroque music and didn't require any support of the arm or other big muscles of the performer's body. Here is a short excerpt from Scarlatti's sonata played on the harpsichord. Please notice the independent finger action of the performer. Even though it's already a pianist who studied as a classical pianist and then switched to harpsichord. Even watching this musician playing on 3 manuals of the harpsichord, we can clearly see that the body position doesn't change when he plays top manual or medium on the lower one, and that's why the weight distribution of the whole body is practically impossible there. The new hammer piano was invented in 1700 by Bartolomeo Cristofori, an Italian musician and instrument maker. The new instrument, called a pianoforte, just like a harpsichord, looked very similar but had an absolute different action. As you see on the pictures, instead of strings being plucked with feather quills, the piano strings were struck with wooden hammers, which affected the weight of the keys and made them much heavier than those of the harpsichord. It took a long time for the piano to become popular, as it was perceived as a more difficult instrument to perform on. Johann Sebastian Bach was familiar with the new instrument and even tried playing it, but he didn't like it at all and never wrote a single piece for the piano. Piano's first big promoter was Muzio Clementi, an Italian-born English composer, performer, and pedagogue. He became known as the father of the piano because he widely endorsed the new instrument and even founded the first piano factory in London in order to mass produce pianofortes. Clementi realized that the piano was very different from the harpsichord and required a special technique. His discoveries were reflected in his book, The Art of Playing on the Pianoforte. In this book, Clementi emphasized that pianists can't only play with isolated fingers, but must also use their arms and natural body weight as well. But not all musicians agreed with Clementi and his principles. Many performers insisted on the use of isolated fingers when playing the piano, the same way they played the harpsichord. They belonged to the finger technique school. Others claimed that the weight of the body and arms was more important than finger action for piano performance. This approach became known as weight technique school. And even though those debates happened centuries ago, followers of these two different schools still exist today. In some countries, the majority of performers and teachers follow the principles of the finger school, while others prefer the weight school approach. And I'd like to show you two little videos. On the first one, you'll see a child being taught to use isolated fingers to play the piano. R, 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 R. As you hear the sound that the child producing, it's percussive, dry, unexpressive, and there is a lot of tension when he lifts the fingers. The other fingers lift too, and there is a lot of tension develops in the hand. In the next video, that video was taken in a music studio in the US. Notice there is no finger action at all, only the use of the arm. As you will hear, this approach doesn't produce a beautiful sound as well.
What we're going to do for the sleepy lion paw is all we're going to do is we're going to pick up our arm and let it just flop down onto the keys. Now, as you can see, my fingers aren't really doing anything. They're just flopping down.
And you can try, if you're at the piano and your microphones are muted, you can try and see the difference between these two approaches. While many musicians were arguing the pros and cons about which technique school is better, Clementi's most famous contemporaries, Joseph Haydn and Wolfgang Mozart, loved to experience experiment with the new instrument. They composed many pieces for pianoforte. They explored further the legato articulation with short slurs, 2 and 3 note slurs, while trying to imitate the sounds of string instruments, because Haydn was a great symphonist. He wrote more than 100 symphonies. And Mozart, his main genre was opera. He was exploring the singing abilities of the piano with those slurs. Uh, but they both wrote quite a few piano sonatas, which were much longer than Baroque sonatas and technically much more challenging and required more endurance from the performer. To reduce the strain on the body while performing, it was necessary to properly apply and distribute the weight of the arms and body into the keys. But still, light and independent fingers prevailed in these composers' works and performance styles. The next composer to explore the possibilities of the piano was Beethoven. The following quote is from the book Famous Pianist and Their Technique by Reginald Gorin, a professor at the Eastman School of Music. He wrote, Beethoven was an independent thinker, and his playing was ahead of his time. He was working for fullness of tone and was concerned that the power of the arm should back up the fingers. Therefore, he used a combination of the finger and weight technique schools for his composition and performance styles, as well as in his teaching. Beethoven was a great pedagogue, and his philosophy and performance principles were followed by many of his talented students. The most famous of them was Karl Czerny, the Austrian composer, teacher, and pianist of Czech origin, whose music spans the late classical and early romantic eras. He wrote over 1,000 studies for piano that are still widely used in piano teaching. However, if you are familiar with one of his latest opuses, The Art of Finger Dexterity, Opus 740, you probably noticed that these studies are so long and so challenging. They are just simply impossible to perform on piano without applying body weight, which reinforced and followed Beethoven's teaching. Following Beethoven and Czerny, many pianists in different parts of the world were developing a new approach, which came to be known as the unified modern technique, and was a great combination of the finger school and weight school. The legacy of Beethoven and Czerny was followed by pianists such as Liszt, Leschetizky, Chopin, and Schumann, who used the whole body along with agile and independent fingers in their performances. One of these pianists, Fyodor Leschetizky, he is the second on the slide. He was born in Poland. He is Polish-Austrian roots. He played a huge role in the development of piano pedagogy and piano technique worldwide. As a pianist, Leschetizky combines the classical training of Czerny, the cantabile style of Chopin, and the brilliance of Liszt. These qualities were predominant in his students as well. After his studies with Czerny in Austria, Leschetizky returned briefly to his native Poland, and then he was invited to Russia by his famous friend, pianist Anton Rubinstein, and together they founded the first Russian conservatory in St. Petersburg. Leschetizky served as the dean of piano department in this famous institution for almost 30 years, teaching many generations of musicians from all over the world. Among Eastern European pianists, Leschetizky is named the father of the Russian piano school, even though he wasn't even a little bit of Russian. Even though Leschetizky said he didn't have a specific method of teaching, quite a few of his students and followers who wrote books, articles, and memoirs referred to his teaching philosophy as Leschetizky's method. But it was presented very differently. Some of them emphasized fingers action and presented hundreds of exercises that Leschetizky would use to develop agile and independent fingers, when others emphasized the use of entire body in combination with finger independence to produce a beautiful sound. These musicians elaborated and further developed the principles of the unified modern technique. Isabel Vengerova was a student of Leschetizky as well as famous pianist and pedagogue. She was recognized for training all her pupils with an approach designed to achieve expressive playing and a beautiful tone. Among her pupils were Samuel Barber, Leonard Bernstein, Menahem Pressler, Gary Grafman, the teacher of Yujia Wang and Lang Lang, and many others. The book, Zvengerova's System of Piano Playing, written by another student of her, Robert Schick, is based on detailed notes taken by the author during a decade of study under her. The book begins with the description and explanation of the main principles of unified modern technique that Vengerova acquired from Leschetizky. We will briefly talk about some of them. The main principle, the first one, is the basis of technique is sound production, and technique is just a tool to achieve it. Non-percussive touch, relaxation, weight application, and flexible wrist. And now I'll talk a little bit about each of them. The principle number one introduces technique as a tool for producing a beautiful tone. Leschetizky taught his students to evoke a fine tone from the instrument and make music and not noise. The basis of technique is the sound production. Principle number two is non-percussive touch. To produce a warm, non-percussive sound, pianists must have the fingers in contact with the keys or feeling the surface of the key for a moment before playing. This helps avoiding the hitting noise produced by the finger striking a key like a drumstick. On the other hand, if the fingers are lifted high off the keys, the sound will be harsh and percussive rather than expressive. However, in many countries, teachers are convinced that the goal of teaching beginners is to develop strong fingers and teach them to raise each isolated finger high and to forcefully hit the keys, as illustrated in the following video. The quality of the sound speaks for itself.
有多高才多高啊？拍，好的，太棒了，100分，拍。
The third principle is weight application. This illustration of the great virtuoso Franz Liszt wonderfully portrays him performing while using a combination of the body weight and incredible finger work. The correct application of weight into the key is essential, and we must teach students how to adjust their weight to produce different sounds. This will also reduce the use of force and tension while playing. The key element of using the body weight is the proper piano posture. Next principle is relaxation. All the muscles must be relaxed except those that are directly involved in sound production. Even when playing a single note, our muscles contract while lowering a piano key. Therefore, the most essential skill every pianist must learn is how to switch from tension to relaxation quickly and easily. If students don't learn when and how to make this switch from the very first lessons, the muscles will stay tense for long periods of time, for the duration of the entire piece, which may result in tiredness of the performer, soreness of the muscles, and sometimes even injuries. And the next principle is flexible wrist. The flexibility and power of the wrist must be developed because it plays a huge role in piano playing. A famous pianist, Dmitry Bashkirov, compared a pianist's wrist with a second pair of lungs in their body. If the wrists are stiff and don't breathe, the sound will be sterile and non-expressive. Let's watch one of my former students, Chendi. She was 14 at the time this video was taken, after 8 years of piano lessons, after 7 years of piano lessons. She is performing Romance in D-flat major by Finnish composer Jan Sibelius. In her performance, we will see all the main principles of the unified modern technique. Warm, non-percussive tones that imitate the sound of string instrument or human voice. Breathing wrists and arms, non-percussive sound, powerful, loud chords with the help of the weight and not force or tension. Fast passages with light independent fingers supported by the big muscles. Let's hear it. Let's watch it. Of course, Chandy was in this video already in advanced level, but we all understand that we must start teaching these main principles from the very first lessons. However, technique is very complex and abstract concept. How best to explain it to a young child? To be successful, special materials need to be adapted for children to introduce those principles. The increased popularity and affordability of pianos and piano lessons in the mid of 19th century produced a big demand for teachers and materials for beginners. Many of the first children's method books were published in Western Europe. In France by the composer and conductor Ernest van de Velde, and another famous pianist Margaret Long. In Germany, Fritz Emmond and Alexander Burkhardt each introduced their own methods. In America, one of the first piano methods was the easiest piano course by John Thompson, followed later with music for piano by Robert Pace. By the end of 20th century, many new methods were introduced and became very popular among piano teachers and students. In Asia, there were no method books for beginners until late 20th century. So teachers adapted the exercises for fingers by Bayer and Hienon and Czerny's Opus 599 for their students. These books are still main teaching materials for beginners in Asian countries. During at least their first year of studies, many students in Asia are drilled to raise their fingers high and hit the keys while playing technical exercises that originally were not even intended for children, not even mentioning beginners. In the late 20th century, American method books were translated into Mandarin and found their new home in Asian countries. However, even when using these methods, students are still being taught the same old ways of raising isolated fingers high. In the former Soviet Union and other Eastern European countries, one of the first books of exercises and short pieces was written by Elena Gnessina, the picture on the left. It's called Piano ABC. Gnessina herself was a student of famous pianist Vasily Safonov, who studied with Fyodor Lashetitsky. A few decades later, other famous Russian pedagogues, Russian and Ukrainian pedagogues, created curriculums for beginners such as School of Piano Playing by Nikolaev. It's actually translated to English and printed in Canada. And the first Encounters with Music by Anna Tabalevska. These are still main teaching materials for beginners in the entire Eastern Europe. As a student and later as a teacher, I used these materials as well, as others simply were not available in the former Soviet Union. I wasn't aware then that the Russian approach to piano technique was quite different than in other parts of the world. As you see in this picture, it's a screenshot from one of the method books. Beginners start playing with finger number 3 only, and they use this finger for each and all of the notes in the piece. So this is when I want to stop sharing screen, and please feel free to turn on your cameras. I'm also turning my other camera, side camera, and I will spotlight it. Can you see it on the big screen for everyone? Can you see it?
No.
No?
No, I'm not sure. It's from a different angle or
Yes, it's a side. It's showing my keyboard. If you, unfortunately, I don't have the option to spotlight it. Omri, maybe you can find it if you go
oh,
to.
sure. Let me either that or I can make you co-host and maybe that'll work. Just
Or
give
you
me a
can make
moment.
Okay.
Why don't I try to make you co-host and see if it works that way? Just one moment.
Okay.
If you could try again.
I'm able to pin it.
Oh, okay.
I don't. If
Oh.
you could, people can find it individually, they can pin it.
Okay, let me. I have two screens here, so it'll just show a side view of the keyboard.
Yes.
Dr.
Okay.
Shimon, you should be able to spotlight it as the host.
Okay. I'm
Now
just
I
looking.
can spot-
Oh, okay. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you
So
did that,
as-
Irina. Okay, go ahead.
So that's why I would like to invite you to experience things together with me, so you can feel and experiment what I'm talking about. So during the first weeks of piano lessons, playing with finger number 3, which is the longest, I'm going to try to show, finger number 3 is the longest, no, this way, among all the fingers, and it's conveniently located in the middle of the hand and at the end of the arm. Please make sure your microphones are off so we don't hear a lot of playing. Students learn to support their body on this finger and their body weight on this finger, considering correct posture, and we'll talk about posture a little bit later. If the hand, wrist, and arm are well aligned, creating a natural curve away from the center of the body, not toward, but away from the center of the body, this helps to firm up the nail joint and support the entire weight. I don't use any force or any tension. I just use my natural weight and I keep finger in the key without pushing it, but I still support my whole upper body. In order to move from key to key using the same finger without lifting it high off the key, the wrist is naturally floating off the key or breathing and leading the arm in the direction of the next key. For example, I'll go here, my wrist is leading me here. Now I'm gonna go up, I'll show you this way, and my wrist will lead me here. And you see my fingers are practically touching the key and I feel the surface of the key. As soon as I lift my finger and try to do like that, you immediately hear this noise, not a sound. But using the wrist and finger number 3, I don't need to use other fingers and I only can feel and support my weight on different keys, on finger number 3 only. Because the wrist directs the hand, the relaxed fingers that dangle down don't have to lift off the keys in order to play the next key. When weight support, with the weight support, wrist flexibility and relaxation skills, when we gain these skills working with finger number 3, then the other long fingers are added. And it takes, for different students, different times. Sometimes 2 weeks are enough. Sometimes we need to play with finger number 3 6 to 8 weeks. But right after that, we can feel the same way on other long fingers. Playing with 2 and 4 is not much different. And as long as we learned how to support our weight, we can easily use these fingers. time the students start playing with all 5 fingers, all the main principles of the unified modern technique are being established while developing the first fundamental articulation of non-legato. While speaking with piano teachers from around the world, I learned that many of them had never learned or taught the articulation non-legato, while others describe it as with very abstract term detached. However, the word detached is very abstract, and other articulations such as staccato, partata, as well as poorly executed legato can all be described as detached. Proper non-legato is a fundamental building block of piano technique from which all other articulations are going to evolve, and we are gonna experiment with this evolution together. So non-legato consists of 3 stages. First stage is preparation, breathing wrist. Wrist floats up, and it's even better when we use the breath, breathing while doing it. So let's breathe in, lift the wrist. The second main and longest stage is when we drop the weight into the supportive finger number 3, breathe out, and listen to the beginning, duration, and the end of the sound. And the third stage is, again, the same as the first, relaxation. When we, with the sound going away, we breathe in again and float our wrist off. After the student feels comfortable with a single note playing non-legato, they should try a series of notes. And when we play a series of notes, to avoid extra movements, our first and third stages of non-legato fuse together, and we play very economically. And this time, we already don't need to use the wrist all the way up and down. And down actually doesn't go below, too much below the keyboard. So the wrist should be like a spring here. But up it can go all the way, so we can experience fingers dangling down from the wrist and only finger number 3 is touching the key. When we start playing series of notes, we don't need as much motion in the wrist. Okay. Any questions here? Have you tried any new revelation experiences? Would you like to speak up right now? I can remove spotlight and I'll make a gallery view in case anyone has a question and I can explain. So we talked right now about non-legato.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Rachel Davis. So a lot of the method books that we have now, they start with the black key. Do you recommend that though?
Yes, definitely. Tales of a Musical Journey starts from the black keys as well, but with finger number 3, and I'll explain why. With single finger number 3, no other fingers for the first few weeks. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just curious, how would you, in your approach, how do you, what is the difference between portato? You mentioned portato, for example, versus non-legato. I mean, of course, it depends on the piece and the composer, but how do you see the difference?
It's a very big difference, actually, between non-legato. Non-legato, as I just played, we hear a big break between the sounds. We hear the end of the sound. When we talked about portato, which is much more advanced articulation, we don't introduce it in the first years of playing at all, only non-legato. So portato practically has no break and it doesn't use it's kind of, you can experience it if you play trying to play legato with the same finger, just sliding from key to key. That would be portata. Non-legato is fully releasing, listening to the end and beginning of each sound. That would be non-legato with all three stages. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? If not, yes, please.
One question. So it's quite technical, the three stages of your playing. How would you teach this concept to a young child? I mean, like if we go into such details, I don't think they will be able to understand this.
Very good question. I definitely don't teach young children the same way I explained to you. First of all, we approach in stages. At first, we use different, let me spotlight again my camera. First of all, I use a lot of props, and I didn't prepare one, but I'll put a little monkey on my wrist. And we use with exercise such as, for example, butterfly. Usually I use butterfly, and I'll show you. It will be in my presentation later. We use the movements, vertical movements of the wrist. With the monkey swing, we learn horizontal movements of the wrist. I manipulate, I hold students' hands in my hand for a while until I feel they're relaxed, and I'll show that too. So you'll hear a lot of answers later, but I definitely don't introduce this way. It's just for you, for teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm sorry I didn't fully answer, but you'll get more answers along the way. So let's talk about how legato articulation evolves from non-legato. It's actually a very natural progression, and it starts with execution of two-note slurs, which is just a modification of non-legato. It also has three stages. The same first stage as we breathe in, then we drop our weight down. I'll do it better with the left hand so you can see the action. Breathe in, breathe out, and right before we breathe in again, we step to the adjacent key with the next finger, and then we release the third stage. So here is the non-legato. First stage, second stage, third stage. Two-note slurs. And it takes the same single movement. It's three stages, but it's the same single movement, and we can very clearly hear the single connection. But in fact, it's very hard, because while executing two-note slurs, we need to listen to the first sound, its duration at the end, connection to the second sound, its beginning, duration, and the end. After that, after we master with a few pieces and exercises this two-note slurs, we go to the three-note slurs. Three-note slurs is the same as two, but we'll start it with long fingers 2 and 4. We will play first note in and skip down. The same as two-note slurs, using vertical and horizontal wrist motion, and then we'll fill in the middle in between these two notes on the same single motion. It will be like a bridge between first and third note. And backward. So you see the action of my wrist. The same happens when we teach four notes legato. Let's say here. We use it. We start with playing 2 notes slurs interval 4s, and then we just fill in. And 5 notes, same way. And backward. And this way we don't have to deal with which we observe in a lot of students playing. And it's so natural, it comes so organically after they learn to play non-legato. It comes almost unnoticeably. Of course, we use props for wrist, as you saw in the picture, one of the pictures. Sometimes I use elastic band to help children to feel the wrist and relaxation. I help them this way too, to play 2 note slurs. And of course, manipulating their hands with my hands. And then we'll go to staccato, which also evolves from non-legato, but it only has 2 stages of execution instead of 3. And I had a little frog here, I don't know where it went. Okay, we'll figure out without it. So first, the preparatory stage, the same as non-legato, breathing in, and then instead of lowering the wrist down and going into the key, we'll use a pushing or thrusting motion out of the key. And you can see that at the end of the staccato playing, my hand goes back to this relaxation stage, but we are missing this long second stage of non-legato. Let's try again. I'll try now with the right hand. And of course, it's great to start with the strongest fingers as well. So first pieces on staccato would be played only with the third fingers. And that's the order of developing and evolving technical skills, starting with third finger non-legato, then going to series of notes with third finger and learning to play other fingers of the hand, then 2 notes legato, starting with fingers 3 and 2 and going then to 3 and 4, 2 and 3, and then more notes legato, and then staccato. Do you have any questions? Let me remove spotlight. Any questions before I turn the slideshow back on?
I have a question again. Okay,
Sure.
so you say that we have to make sure our hand very relaxed when we play. Are you talking about the whole hand, the finger, or just the wrist relaxed?
Everything has to be relaxed when the action is finished. Of course, when we play the note, we use the muscle contraction, but as soon as the action is done, everything has to be relaxed. So our muscles should contract directly while making a sound, and then they have to relax right away.
I had a question, Irina. So I just in terms of, I think people speak of different kinds of staccato, and I love how you're doing the staccato that you just mentioned. It seems like kind of a large motion. I'm just curious, at what point do you teach maybe different kinds of staccato, like a smaller motion, like a finger staccato? Does that come much later, or?
As soon as children understand how it works, we start playing pieces which are a little bit faster and a little bit lighter, and we gradually subside the motion until they play with fingertips only. So it happens within, I would say, few weeks. We experience all the stages of staccato. Of course, it's impossible to mention everything in couple hours, but when I teach pedagogy courses, which I'll tell you later about, we go through every single stage very detailed and trying and experiencing. And of course, I don't introduce staccato or legato the same way as I did right now for teachers. I use props, and I don't know where I put little froggy. When we play staccato, and stories in the book, in the Tales of a Musical Journey, support all the concept. We put little rubber frog on the wrist and make it jump to the lead. So they learned very naturally, having fun. And I never struggle with staccato because it's so natural. Analogies, we'll talk about analogies, of course, today later. They work magic. After a couple times of trying with the frog, kids love playing staccato and doing it very healthy, organically, and nicely.
Great,
Any
thanks.
other questions?
Irina, do you use wrist rotation for the legato? So like,
It's an interesting question. Wrist rotation, of course, our wrist has to be relaxed and flexible, but I do not introduce rotation until kids in more advanced stages. And basically, rotation I use only for, let me spotlight again so everyone can see. We need rotation for tremolos or etudes like that. That's when we use a little bit of wrist rotation, but I don't even tell children about it. They don't need to know, it comes naturally. When we play tremolo, then we try to experiment a little bit with forearm rotation, because it actually starts in the forearm. It doesn't start with the wrist, but not when we play a few notes legato. A rotation would make, first of all, what rotation makes? Extra movement and percussive sound. And I know a lot of followers of Galansky Institute, the Tubman method. They teach rotation. But I have my personal opinion. I don't want to talk about it right now. This method was developed to help pianists with injuries, and when their muscles are so tense that they can't even play, then this rotation helps them to relax, but they already have skills to produce a good sound. If we start introducing rotation at the early stages, all we can do is add unnecessary movements and teach children to hear a very bad percussive sound.
thank you.
But again, that's my personal opinion. You don't have to think the same as I.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions about that? If not, then I'll turn my presentation again. Sorry, I need to start it first. I'm sorry. Okay, and now I should see it. Yes. Okay, so we stopped right here. And right now, I will show you a couple of videos. but showing how children at different stages learn and absorb those technical skills. For example, here you see a 4-year-old Claire who plays a little piece from Paula Dreyer's Little Gems for Piano, which Paula wrote to supplement Tales of a Musical Journey. This piece she plays with fingers number 3 only. Good. Ready? And as you can see, Clara had only 6 piano lessons, but she already makes music. Even though she plays with fingers number 3 only, she can play many different melodies with those fingers and feel very comfortable. In the next video, 5-year-old Jerry plays a piece written by Elena Davis called Scots. This is a piece built entirely on 2-note slurs, which really reinforces skills to play 2 notes legato. Alright, I'll skip next video because it's quite long, and that's the slide, the video, which I promised to show you about how I manipulate students' hands. And I need to tell you that I do it a lot during the first months of lessons, and then when I can feel with my hands and muscles are relaxed, I let children work more and more independently. But it's extremely important in the initial stage of lessons. So here's the video. Alright, today we are gonna work on manipulating and helping students with the hand, manipulating the fingers and the wrist. One of the most important things to support their forearms so they don't go down too low. So with my left hand, I support her forearm right here, and I can move it wherever I want, up and down, everywhere. I can also help her to relax the wrist if I hold my hand a little bit like that. So from here, I can move here and help her to relax and drop her hand down. Also, when we start playing, I want to make sure the knuckles don't collapse. Some kids like to collapse them. So what I do, let's straighten our fingers. I grasp right here and slightly pull, and she immediately makes a very wonderful hand position. Let's do it one more time. Pull, and again. Up, pull. Very good. To help fingers to keep nail joint rounded, I support with my thumb underneath and with my fingers 3 and 2 on the top of the nail. So when we play, push a little bit out her joint and help her to hold firmly. Relax, relax. So when I feel a little stiffness, I can help her to relax. Relax with my hands. Mhm, mhm. When I want to add a little more weight to her playing, I'll place my hand above hers, grasp her fingers right here, and we'll play together. So in addition to her weight, she'll feel mine too. Keep holding, honey. Yes. So now with my right hand, I help with the wrist. Yes. Mhm. Until student creates a habit of relaxing and feeling the hand in good shape and very naturally relaxed, we need to help them a lot. Um, Even though I brought with me, when I came to the United States in 1993, I brought with me all the books that I used with students in Ukraine, I quickly realized I couldn't use them with American students. And looking at the first page of the book and the last page, you can definitely see why. These books had no artwork, no color, no explanations of material, no practice suggestions, no creative activities. In addition, there were, for the beginners, 6 songs on one page. Another problem with these books was extremely quick, fast pace of introduction new concepts. You can see within 1 year, the student had to jump from the page on the left to the page on the right and play these pieces. As I mentioned, in former Soviet Union, with that system of education, every student had at least 2 lessons a week. When I came to United States and learned that I have to teach 30 minutes, 1 lesson a week, and there are no other theory lessons or anything else, I need to teach everything, it was impossible. So I had nothing to do but start searching for American method books, and I found many different ones. They were all child friendly. Um, they had lyrics for the songs, large size notes, practice suggestions. In many cases, also included duet parts or soundtrack for each song. And I was so excited to start experimenting with all of them. But very quickly I realized that all American methods were based on a very different approach to technique. The 5-finger position. Here's an explanation I found in one of the method books of the 5-finger position. In the C major position, the thumb is on the C. Each of your consecutive fingers are placed on each consecutive white key. It's pretty simple. When music lessons are started, students will typically keep their hand in this position and play simple music by just moving specific fingers. At first, I didn't see anything wrong with that. Moreover, such an approach seemed very logical and attractive to me. For a couple of months, I really enjoyed teaching young beginners with wonderful, child-friendly method books that used 5-finger position until I realized that there was something wrong with all my students. All the beginners started reading music by finger numbers, ignoring the notation. The sounds they produced were very dry, percussive, and unexpressive. All my youngsters developed a lot of tension in their small hands and fingers. As shown on this picture, when preparing their hands to play in 5-finger position, I observed that my students had to stretch and tense up their little fingers to reach all 5 keys from C to G. Because of this need to stretch, the thumbs were lying on the keys. In an effort to keep the fingers in this stretched position for the duration of the piece, each finger was isolated and worked independently to raise and hit the keys from above, using the force and tension coming from the hand rather than natural weight coming from the big muscles of the arms and upper back. The fifth fingers also had to stretch and lay flat, sometimes even on their sides, in order to reach the fifth note. But the most disturbing and alarming thing I observed was a very awkward twist in the wrist towards the center of the body, instead of a natural curve away of it, while being very stiff and inflexible. These tendencies that I noticed developing in my beginners were already hardcore bad habits with the students who transferred for me from other teachers and have been taught with 5-finger position methods. I've noticed the very same struggles and technical problems in every country where I've given workshops in Western Europe, Americas, and Asia, and Australia. This is a video with beginner taken in China. You can see a number of problems with the students' hands and sound production despite every attempt by the teacher to help their student. Notice how the child keeps fifth finger on C even when playing with first finger note G. You see how fingers collapse in every possible joint, and fifth finger is on the side. The next video is just a random video from YouTube of a second-year student. You can see a definite advancement from the beginner to the second year with the difficulty of the piece, but tendencies that we saw in the first video have now become bad habits in the student. The worst nightmare for every musician is to injure their hands and become unable to play. Unfortunately, according to the newer studies in the US, many music college freshmen are already suffering from mild to severe form of tendinitis, which is also called the repetitive stress injury. Tendinitis develops over time, and only 1,500 incorrect repetitions are needed for this condition to occur. Let's contrast that with how many repetitions a pianist will play in 1 hour, practicing 16th notes at 120 beats to the quarter note. 28,800. Only in 1 hour. That's how important it shows how important to teach correctly, so this never happens with our students, because when we start teaching beginners, we never know if they want to go to music college or not. We can't tell a 5-year-old when they become 18 suddenly. And I had students who decided to go to music college in senior year. So it's our huge responsibility to teach children correctly so they can um, develop healthy and organically and can do with their life whatever they want and whenever they want if they decide to become musicians. After extensive research and talking to many teachers and college students that suffer from arm and wrist pain, finger numbness, and excessive fatigue, and then being told that they all began their lessons with a 5-finger position, I am convinced that the root cause of these problems can be traced to the initial stages of their study. If I'm just curious if anyone in our audience has ever been experiencing those symptoms, if you could just post in the chat yes or no, it would be interesting. All right. Children's fingers need to be given time to learn to play, and at first they need a lot of help from us, their teachers. Let's compare this process to a child learning to walk. A newborn baby cannot stand or start walking right after they are being born. First, they have to sit up, then crawl, then hold onto something and begin to stand on unstable legs with the help and support to maintain their balance. Only then does the baby take their first careful steps and begin to walk more confidently every day. Unless the parents decide that the baby must develop strong legs and start doing intense stretching of the baby's legs and putting weight on them to make them stronger. We all understand that this way we don't help but hurt the child, and possibly for a lifetime. Similarly, when starting with 5-finger position, we teach little fingers to stretch, tense up, and walk before they gain balance, stability, learn to relax and align their wrist and arm. Unlike playing with finger number 3 at first, children gradually learn to balance the hand on their finger, support their weight, gaining strength, and switch from tension to relaxation prior to walking or playing with all 5 fingers. Many teachers ask me, what if a student doesn't plan to become a professional musician or a concert pianist? They surely don't develop injuries because they simply don't practice enough. They just want to have fun and learn to play simple pieces. Unfortunately, most of young students who develop bad technical habits at the initial stages of study feel physically uncomfortable and awkward at the piano. The sound they produce doesn't touch either their or anyone else's hearts. These children usually quit lessons early on and then either regret about it for the rest of their lives, or if their parents force them to stick with lessons, they start hating classical music, resisting learning, quit a year or two later anyway, and never want to look back at the piano. So at this point, my technique development part ends, and I will probably stop sharing and see if you have any questions before we go to the next section. Anyone experienced tiredness, injuries of the hand? Yes, I see. Okay. Were you taught in 5-finger position?
I'll go ahead and ask a quick question if I can, but please, everybody, feel free to ask in the chat or just unmute yourselves at this point. So for the, I just find it, hold on, I have a message here. Oh, okay. Transcription, live transcription, closed captioning. I enabled that now. I hope it's going to start soon. That's so fascinating. Your graphic about the problems with 5-finger position, and I suppose I could have seen this in the videos that you played before, but concerning the thumb then, so in your approach with starting with finger number 3, etc., is it your preference then that the thumb is actually off the keys, so it's a little bit kind of close to the body, as opposed to trying to put the thumb on the key together with the other fingers, or no?
No, I can demonstrate a little bit.
Okay.
So our hand developed this way that we learn to grasp and hold the object. So as you can see, the thumb works in opposite direction to other students, and you can all try if you have pencil nearby. So if we put the pencil on the keys naturally and then take it away, this is the position our thumb is gonna be in. We definitely need to be close to the black keys. So if I have problem with transfer students, I put a pencil next to black keys and have them grasp it, hold it, put it back, and stay in this position. Now, there is nothing wrong if thumb goes in and out often on the keys for short times. It's definitely not a good way to teach to play when thumb is staying away, because it also develops tension. The most natural position is this, closed hand. Sometimes I tell kids who do like that, close the umbrella, and they close it. But thumb, basically, it should be even under 3rd finger or next to it, but not away the whole skip, so it has to play like that. To make actually another very important point that these fingers work downward, they play downward. The thumb actually plays to the side a little bit. It shouldn't go down because the whole hand will fall on it. But we can definitely learn to support our weight on the thumb as well as on other fingers, just like on the fifth. It's just like you can imagine standing on one leg. When you stand on one leg, your whole body is aligned over this one leg. And then when you step on the other leg, the whole body moves and aligns over the other leg. So when you use your fingers, the same has to happen. Playing one finger, we align our weight on that finger. And then next finger, we align the whole arm weight on the next finger. And the same on the thumb and the same on the 5th finger. Now, 5th finger, even though it's shorter than other fingers, but it's shaped exactly the same way. So it never has to play on the side. It has to play exactly as long fingers do. And for that, because it's short, we need to align our wrist. So we create a very nice line right here when we play with 5th finger. If we go toward thumb, that's what creates this and tendinitis basically right away. Any other questions? Did I answer your question, Omri?
Yes, yes, very much. Thank you.
Good. Okay, yes, Cindy, please. Your microphone is off. Cindy, your microphone is off.
You have to unmute.
There we go.
There
That's
we
better.
go.
Okay, the words that are at the bottom of the screen are coming up over the picture. Is there a way to get rid of that? I'm not sure how to do that.
I think Marianne just suggested something in the chat.
Yeah, at the bottom where you have tools for Zoom, like the chat, the record, the live you can click live transcript, and then.
I guess I don't see that. I'm on my phone. I don't know if that's the problem.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I see one that says view full transcript. Do I need to hit that?
No, you might want less transcript.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I don't see anything for that.
I could try to log on my phone and push things around, but to see if I know how to help you there.
Sorry, I'm not sure how to do that.
It's okay. I just got a request for a closed captioning from a participant, so I turned it on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, should we move on to the slideshow, the next part?
Yes,
Sure,
go ahead.
sure.
All right. Let's see. Music is the most pleasant, beautiful, and accessible form of communication between human beings. It's like a magic potion. It's capable of inspiring heroic actions, of provoking devastation, raising blood pressure, or treating depression. How can we help children experience all these feelings and emotions while teaching them proper instrumental skills and avoiding developing bad technical habits? In his book, Music and Early Childhood, author John Fierabend writes, "Not all children are preparing to become professional musicians, but all of them live through the musical experiences that shape their emotional learning. That's why reducing music to the exercises is not going to teach children how to play music, because such exercises will not provide an emotional foundation for music making." From childhood, every person should learn to understand the language of music, its meaning, its ideas. Piano study must become a part of a well-rounded education, and this will only happen if the development of all the proper instrumental skills of a young pianist go hand in hand with development of their musical ear, imagination, creativity, analytical thinking, and emotional maturity, which will benefit both this little person as well as society. To teach any discipline, including music, successfully, we teachers must understand that children learn very differently than adults. In fact, the opposite way. When you learn at this picture, you will see the opposite way of locating those concepts as understanding and experiencing. The professor of University of Texas, Bob Duke, stated in his book Intelligent Music Teaching, "Children learning is not a result of what teachers say, but a result of what teachers have students do. So if adults learn first by logical explanation, demonstration, through consciousness and understanding, they um, they can experience then and do things, while children experience using their subconsciousness, imaginative learning, uh, and their intuition, and then they understand after they experience. As an example, I want to show you a very short video um, of a baby learning to eat with a spoon. This child is not old enough to learn or understand his mom's explanation how to eat with a spoon, or to learn from watching adults eat with a spoon. The skill comes subconsciously through experience and intuition.
How to teach your baby to feed themselves. With a little practice and coordination, your child will be eating independently in no time. Step 4. Introduce them to a baby spoon once they can pick up food with their fingers. Step 5. Put food on the spoon and help them put it in their mouth. Step 6. Let them practice feeding themselves. Some food will surely end up in their hand on the floor, but with practice, it will eventually end up in their mouth. Step 7. Encourage them to keep trying.
And that's exactly what we need to do with our piano babies. The effect of musical development on a child are unparalleled and vitally important in the formation of their emotional maturity and development of their thought process. In addition, music allows the growth of sensitivity to the beauty in art and life and helps to develop a person's creative abilities. The task of a piano teacher is to be able to interest the child in the process of mastering a musical instrument. That interest, if approached properly, will soon become a necessity in the life of that student. Achieving this in the instrumental lesson is much more difficult for a beginner than achieving a similar goal in art classes or dance lessons, where the child can show creativity and see the results of their work much quicker. That's why when we begin teaching a young student, the introduction of technical skills or theoretical concepts should come by means of stories, images, and analogies that are easy for children to understand and help their bodies naturally find the proper movements needed for execution of complex technical skills. For example, most teachers work very hard on the student's piano posture, going through many checkpoints that are shown in every method book, but it hardly ever seems to work, as you see on these pictures. Children continue sitting too low and too close to the piano with no foot support, slouching or leaning backward, with arms dangling and not supported by large muscles of the back. And because of this, their weight is not being distributed properly. That's why fingers collapse and the sound they produce is unexpressive. So now I'm not going to turn off the slideshow, but I still would like you to experience. By using a simple analogy and asking children to imitate their riding the horse, it immediately does the trick and fixes the problem, even for children who've never been on the horse, but they all seen people riding horses in movies or in the pictures. This analogy actually comes from Leschetizky's statement. The pianist has to sit tall and unrestrained on the bench and yield to the movements of the arms, just like a horseman yields to the movements of the horse. It never failed in my work with beginners and transfer students. So let's try now and see how it works. please close your eyes for a minute and imagine you're on a horse and take a position if you're riding a horse and horse is moving. And I'd like you to describe what happened with your body practically unconsciously as soon as you thought of this image. Anyone wants to try and tell us? Has anyone tried?
I've never been on a horse before, but just trying to imagine it, I could see the horse motions just moving my entire body, kind of swaying, I don't know, my torso and my arms, kind of to a certain rhythm of whatever stroll they're having.
You found the balance, right? You felt your back toned, because if horse is moving, you can't be just relaxed. You have to respond to the movement of the horse, right? Anyone else? Did you feel like you had to move forward to feel the weight on your feet? Because as you see on the picture, if the feet do not support our body weight, it's very easy to fall off the horse. We need to be able to spring during the movement of the horse. Leshetitsky also mentions that pianist has to have 3 support points. First is the sit bones, second is the feet, and third is the fingertip. And if one of those support points is missing, then the posture and weight distribution are not going to work properly. The whole body will not work properly for playing the piano. And that's why when we teach young children, it's so important to get this pedal extender or foot rest so they can actually stand up on their feet and sit down on the front of the bench and continue feeling the weight in their feet. I see so many children playing with their legs dangling down, and it immediately affects their sound. Anyone else wants to share the experience? If not, we will go on. I use many different analogies in teaching beginners. Here are a couple of them. As I mentioned before, I mentioned both butterfly and the frog. Butterfly helps us to learn vertical wrist motion. Blend G and blend the key. And Freddy the Frog, the character of one of the story, teaches us to play staccato. By jumping from the wrist to the piano. Just like using analogies when teaching technical skills or theory concepts, we cannot overestimate the role of the stories or fairy tales in piano lessons with young beginners. Children quickly forget all the abstract musical concepts, even if they understand them initially. But when there is a sequence of events and vivid images, one quick reminder of a story's character can bring back memories right away. And not only memory in the mind, but also physical memory and visual memory and even ear memory coming from the sounds they used to make. Stories are the ultimate tool of persuasion for children. They ignite their imagination and help to create personal and emotional connection with each piece the student plays. On this slide, you see the picture of the first chapter of Tales of a Musical Journey, a piano curriculum for young beginners that I created in 2010. This chapter introduces students to the magical kingdom of sounds. From the very first moments of piano studies, the child is taken to a magical world with characters who represent musical concepts. Fairy musicalina is a general concept of music. King meter and wizard metronome help us with rhythm and beat. Prince rhythm introduces us to rhythm, and princess melody to making a tune or a song. If students learn to connect with the stories and use their imagination from the beginning of their piano studies, learning any piece of music will become interesting and fulfilling for them. Story helps to build a personal connection with the character of music. The student will stay interested and never get bored of practicing. In this next video, my former 7-year-old student Catherine tells a story she made up to Ronda by Kulau about cat and mouse.
This is the story of Rondo that I made up. So here is the mouse getting some cheese. Then he runs so he doesn't get noticed by the cat, but the cat notices the mouse. Then he runs to get the mouse. Then the mouse wants to run away from the cat, so
You can do two hands.
then here the cat runs very quietly so he doesn't get noticed. But here the mouse notices, so he runs even faster and louder. And the cat, who has just finished a big meal, kept falling all over the place, like. Then he finally picks himself up and does loud running again. Then it's the mouse's turn. He runs very loudly and quietly. Then the cat falls asleep and dreams.
What is he dreaming about?
He's dreaming that he ate a bunch of mice. Here, the mouse again returns to get his cheese. But he made a big mistake of crawling over the cat's belly. Here he falls, then quickly picks himself up. Then, when the cat woke up, he thought of a new plan, and his eyes were still closed because he wanted to pretend to the mouse that he was still sleeping, but actually he was thinking of a new plan. So here is his plan. He tries to sneak up really closely on his tippy toes and grab the mouse. Then he surprises the mouse. This is the part where he surprises the mouse. Then he comes a little louder. where he really scares the mouse. Then the mouse will really quickly run away. Then the cat follows him. Then finally the mouse returns to his hole and tells the colony of mice how to trick the cat and get his head into the mouse hole so he can't eat anything. So one of the wise elder mouse came up with this idea. He thought. And then he finally gets an idea. Then he tells the colony. Then they do it. One mouse runs out, then distracts the cat. Then the cat follows. And then when it finally gets to the mouse hole, the cat gets its head stuck. Then the mice all laugh out loud.
So that was a story about cat and mouse. Healthy musical growth is not possible without immersion in classical music, which most children usually don't listen to nowadays. One of the best ways to get students to appreciate classical music is to teach them to become active listeners. Listening to music will help children to learn to analyze the score, develop their musical memory, inner musical ear, imagination, and strengthen their natural abilities. There are many ways in which children can learn to become active listeners. Sometimes they can listen with eyes closed and imagine what happens in the music. At the next lesson, I might ask the student to move with the music or pretend they're conducting an orchestra. For homework, a child is often asked to draw a picture of the music he listened to or makes up a story. Children love to act as they listen to music. Then students should be encouraged to find descriptive words to portray the character of the music. Eventually, we progress to deeper analysis, listening to the changes of harmonies, tempos, dynamics, characters, and instruments. In this video is a 4-year-old boy, Darius, who just started piano lessons, and it's one of his first lessons. And for the listening activity, I suggested that Darius conducts while listening to Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King. And I prepared for him a slideshow on the iPad of very picturesque mountains. So he doesn't see the orchestra or conductor, he just listens to the music and looks at the pictures. Notice how this child transforms from the beginning to the end of this activity. Okay, stand up, stand up. Yeah, here. Okay. So you'll stand in front of the iPad, okay? And you'll be conducting the music. And you can do whatever you want, okay? Yes, everybody prepares. Okay, so you're a conductor. Everybody's watching you. Yes, stand a little bit farther so you don't hurt yourself. And you can use the whole body. You can use both arms. Just move. Help different instruments to start. It still sounds the same, right? Now it's gonna change. Okay. So your movements change too, right? Still very quiet and scary. Different instruments, so show them maybe a little bit more. Yes, like real conductor. Good. Even more. Good. I would love to be in the orchestra with this conductor. Keep doing it. It's getting louder. And faster. Yes. Good. Yes. Yes. Even more. Conduct with music. More. You can even stamp your feet sometimes. Okay? Good. Good job. Many teachers ask me how I make my students listen to me. In fact, I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't assign a new piece to listen every week. And with this assignment, they need to do something, either draw as they listen to the music or make up a story. And next time when they come to the lesson, I ask them about the music and they have to describe it to me. So if I just tell them to listen to the music and don't give them specific piece to listen, which I have to make a list of program music that is easy for children to comprehend. If I ask them to listen to Stravinsky or Schoenberg, of course I'm not gonna get them interested, but pieces like this, or Carnival of the Animals by Saint-Saëns, or Peter and the Wolf by Prokofiev, pieces from Schumann's Album for the Young or Tchaikovsky, those pieces that children can relate to and imagine and learn to love listening to the music. There is a website called Classics for Kids, where every month they post a new composer, and there are little stories go like for a month there are 5-6 stories about this composer and different pieces, different compositions, so very useful for working with children. Another very important activity that we teachers often ignore or even discourage, I actually was discouraged to do it as a child, is playing by ear. I had to learn it by myself when I was an adult already. Playing by ear is an ability to reproduce a piece of music one has heard without seeing it written down. Unfortunately, many teachers falsely think that playing by ear would delay their students' sight reading skills. Over the years of researching and teaching, I came to realize that this activity not only helps to develop a student's musical ear, their feel of the rhythm and their ability to hear the harmonies, but it also stimulates their interest in learning, motivates them to spend more time at the piano, and speeds up their overall progress, which in turn aids them to develop self-confidence and self-expression. I recommend that we start teaching this skill early on, from the very first lessons, as the later we start, the more resistance we will get from students, and they won't enjoy this activity as much as they could have. In this little snippet from the very first lesson with the very shy 5-year-old Nina, I attempt to help her to play a little rhyme by ear. For example, I'll play for you first, and then you'll try to repeat, okay? Christmas Do you want me to play one more time? Okay. Now I'd like you to try to play the same thing. Let's see how you can do that. Christmas time is near. Good job. Let me help you a little bit with your hand. Can you scoot forward a little? Yes, very good job. And try to relax your hand. Relax. Give me your hand for a few seconds. I'll give it back to you, okay? Alright, relax. Relax. Don't tilt it like that. Relax. Yeah. I'll just play with your hand, okay? And you just watch. Okay. Great job! Do you think you could play the same song on the white keys? Let's try. Pick any white key. For example, white key. Excellent. Let's try from this white key. Very good. And let's try with you together one more time. For example, from this key. Try not to stick all the fingers together. Let them breathe a little bit. They want to breathe. Can you make little babies do bye-bye? Bye-bye. Let's do bye-bye. Yes, very good. All right. Starting early, every child will be able to recreate on the piano the music they hear, even if it's not piano music, but played by orchestra or sung. Here's my 7-year-old student Anthony playing his version of Vivaldi's Spring for me that he heard on the radio. He had 2 years of piano lessons. That was his independent work. And here's another video, this time of my new transfer student, 7-year-old boy, after 1.5 years of piano lessons with another teacher. He'd never played by ear before and had only studied pieces and exercises in middle C position. Have you heard Jingle Bells?
Yep.
Yes? I think we could sing it with you.
Yes.
Okay, let's say we'll start singing from here. Jingle bells. Let's try to sing. Just sing. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Excellent. Why don't you try to play it by ear from this note? Jingle bells. No, it sounds like jingle. Let's play jingle bells. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle, and then jingle, jingle. You can try. Let's try one more time. You're a little bit lost. The track of it. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle
Do, re.
That one.
Sorry.
Yes, job. Play the whole thing one more time. What?
Well, I got a little a paper to help me remember what I use, what I do, to, which note I play to play. I do have a paper.
But you know what? I'd like it to do it without the paper. I'd like it to do it by ear. We call it playing by ear. But as you play it, David, as you play it, I want you not to hit like that. You already know how we touch the piano a little bit, right? The fingers are playing on the fingertips. Gently. No, you're hitting and your finger collapses. Try to press gently. Jingle bells, yes? Jingle bells, jingle, oh, jingle all the way. Good job. Now, you know that we can play this song not only from this note E, but we can play it from different notes. Why don't we try? Maybe let's play it from note B. Jingle bells. Relax, relax. You can curve a little bit your thumb. Okay, listen carefully. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Great job! How about we'll play it from Z? As you see, with every little activity, I try to use some transposition as well when I work with playing by ear, um, which is very important for musical development, the transposition. Children enjoy this activity very much, and some of them become real expert in transposition, like this 9-year-old Yaya, who can play the entire piece that she works on in any key. I'll show you a little excerpt from the lesson. Okay, she just played Buri in A minor, right? Can you play it in E minor? Every time I have guests, I show you know. What?
Or you don't want to do an F minor.
You want F minor? Let's do F minor. Good, good. Now let's do G minor. Good, good. Now let's do C minor. Good. How about E flat minor? Wait. Good. How about B flat minor? Wait. Okay, good job. Another activity that I start from the very first lessons is ear training, which can be boring and dry if not used in combination with the stories and analogies and movement. Every lesson I change the ways to do ear training activities to maintain the freshness and fun of it. Here's one of the first lessons with 4-year-old Kevin. we started learning note names for him with him. So I wanted him not only to learn the letters and location on the keyboard, but also the relationship between the sounds by ear. So I took him to the stairway in my studio and put the cards with letter names. D, E, oh, too fast. Go back down. Go back down. Down, 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 down. Go start over. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And C somewhere there. C, go back. B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Very good. Now, a little tricky. C, go. C, D, E, D. C, D, E, F, G, F, E, F, G, A, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Yay! Good job! And a little bit later, we can start doing more formal activities, but also in a very fun way. Here's 4-year-old Audrey after several months of piano lessons. I'm gonna play for you. No. C, D, or E. Let's sing them. C, D. No, match your voice. C. She still is not able to match, but she can hear them. I'll play for you note. You quickly turn around and play this note. Good girl. Now, a little harder. The same 3 notes, but now listen. I'll tell you when to turn. I always encourage students to experiment with composition and improvisation. In Tales of a Musical Journey, all the creative activities are included in the same book with technical concepts and stories. Here's 5-year-old Katie, first composition after 3 months of lessons. Ah, oh, look at that. Can you play your song for me? so pretty. Do you have a title? Did you name it? What is it about? Okay. Do you want to think about it and name it? Okay. Let me try to play with you to make up a little accompaniment. If you move to the left a little bit, I'll sit to the right. I'll sit with you. Why don't you play right here and I'll play the same. Let's go. But after we finish Tales of a Musical Journey, we continue working on composition with the help of little rhymes. And I try to pick the rhymes that are easy in the rhythmic characteristics, but do carry little challenges. For example, this one you see on your screen. If we could try to read it together and clap, you will hear the challenge in the last line and see how children of different levels and ages implemented it. So we'll start. Autumn leaves are falling down, falling down, falling down. Autumn leaves are falling down. Now, yellow, red, orange, and brown. So the first step, we learn to read it and clap, and then they create a melody, and then they create an accompaniment. Some kids play only melody when they're very young. Some really like to create accompaniment. Of course, I can help them if they ask, but here are the results. 4-year-old Audrey, after I would say 7-8 months of lessons, it says 9 months of lessons. And here's 6-year-old Oksana after 10 months of piano lessons. And 9-year-old Aksidep, Oksana's older sister. Oops, I'm sorry. My computer started getting frozen. No, come on. Never had it before with computer. The first time. Let me try to, oh, here we go. So that's already after 3 years of piano lessons. As piano teachers, we must nurture the natural abilities of our students along with helping them develop healthy and injury preventive technical skills. The children will learn to appreciate music, play without tension and with healthy injury preventive technique, enjoy the learning process, play by ear, improvise and compose, read notes. If each of these goals, I had each of these goals in mind while creating Tales of a Musical Journey. In 2010, the mom of one of my existing students brought her daughter, younger daughter, 4-year-old, and asked me to start lessons with her. I was in panic because, first of all, I'd never taught a child that young before, but I also knew that I couldn't use either my old books from former Soviet Union or a five-finger position method book with her. That's how Tales of a Musical Journey was born. I started writing a little fairy tale for little Chen Yao for every lesson. I began posting the excerpts from my lessons on YouTube with Chen Yao, and very soon Tales of a Musical Journey became known to many teachers around the world. The method book is designed to provide an all-in-one approach to children's reading, technique, theory, composition, ear training, and performance. The series is designed to make the learning process enjoyable with easy to understand and remember concepts using fairy tales, stories, and different props. Technical skills are introduced gradually. With analogies and letting children to naturally evolve from one stage to the next one. In 2010, Tales of a Musical Journey has been, since 2010, has been translated to 14 languages and is currently being taught in 92 countries. This curriculum helped me literally turn around students who already lost interest in piano lessons and music. A few years ago, I was contacted by the parent of a 5-year-old girl who had been taking piano lessons for a year prior. Her mom told her daughter didn't want to practice piano and was crying every time she had to. The mom was inquiring if I could find a different approach and get little Catherine interested in piano and music again. I was very curious to see what this little girl was so upset about when playing piano and scheduled a meeting. After a few seconds of watching Catherine play, I was ready to cry myself. Here's a few seconds of that first meeting. As you see, all she could demonstrate is playing five-finger position notes from five-finger positions from different notes. How dry, unexpressive, not engaging this is for a young child. Even though I was very cautious about taking a girl that had already developed dislike for music and practice, I decided to give it a try. And after a few months of working with Catherine using Tales of a Musical Journey, she became one of my most outgoing, joyful, and delightful students. In this next video, taken 2 years after, 7-year-old Catherine is performing at the closing concert of Carmel Clavier International Piano Competition as the first prize winner in her age category. She's playing Let's Boogie by Eugenie Rochereau. As we get to the end of this presentation, before I answer your questions, I'd like to mention that if you're interested in exploring more about this curriculum, please join the Facebook group Tales of a Musical Journey and Beyond. And to remember how it looks, please feel free to take a screenshot of the slide so you can easily find it. In this group, more than 6,000 piano teachers from many different countries discuss different teaching issues in an encouraging and supportive atmosphere. All the materials, including toys, props, and supplemental sheet music that you've heard today on the videos kids played from, are available and can be found on my website, irinagorin.com. I have distributors in different countries and translations of the books in different languages. So they can be found at the website irinagorin.com. In addition, if you'd like to gain confidence in teaching with tales and learn all the steps, beginning from the very first lessons and continuing through the whole first year of study, and then transitioning to elementary and intermediate levels of repertoire, you can join my pedagogy courses. They're 10 months long, and live courses, virtual of course, usually run between September and June of next year, but there is also a pre-recorded option, and you can find those with descriptions on my other website called the Gorin Institute. If you're interested in the results of my teaching and other teaching resources, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Irina Gorin, where you can find thousands of videos of my students' performances, piano lessons, interviews, and lectures. The videos conveniently combined in the playlists, and you can easily find Teaching with Tales of a Musical Journey playlist or piano lessons. You can also, I organized videos in groups playlist as Baroque, classical, romantic, contemporary, etudes. There is also playlist teaching resources. I hope I didn't overwhelm you with so much information and videos, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but my main wish is for you, and my hope that you enjoy your job as a piano teacher and understand what a difference each and every one of us, of you, make in every student's lives. And I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. And please turn on your cameras so we can see each other. And I'm ready. I think we finished at pretty good time, right, Omri?
Perfect, perfect.
So,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Please go ahead, and anyone who has questions, this is the time. You can unmute yourself and just ask a question. You could put it in the chat, and I'll try to monitor that and voice or speak out your questions. So go ahead in no particular order.
Irina, I have another question. Hi, this is Rachel. So do you have any suggestion for some parents? They want their children to take the placement exam like CN, but things that haven't developed the routine practice, and their skill hasn't developed, but their parents still want them to take the exam. It's not ready yet. So what would you suggest?
It's a very important question, and I have probably quite a few lectures about parental education, starting not even with the first lesson, but from initial interview with potential family. I've heard many teachers telling me, oh, it's easy for you to work. You select students and you take only the most talented ones. And I can tell you 100%, I don't select students by their abilities, but I select very carefully, I select parents. Because without parents, and that's what I tell them at the first initial meeting, I am not a magician. I am a piano teacher. I can give your child an idea and demonstrate and explain, but as a parent, it's your obligation to help this child to practice at home. And this education of parent doesn't stop for many years in the form of joining Facebook groups for piano parents and piano teachers community. I also started this group to help piano parents. You can find it. It's called Piano Parent Teacher Support Community. We have 2,000 members already where parents can ask any questions with emails, with parent-teacher conferences, with having parents observe lessons and take active part in the learning process. Only this way they understand what's going on. Otherwise, 99% of parents think that piano lessons is just another extracurriculum activity, and they can drop off their child and pick it up in 30 minutes, and magically their child can play Beethoven Opera Sonata and take all the exams. It doesn't happen magically. Parents and children both work very hard. And I had some students whose parents were sitting on the lessons even at their high school years. And not because I asked them, because that's how they felt. They were interested in these lessons. They wanted to help their children at home. And even though their children passed their abilities a long time ago, they still, one mom told me, every time her son practiced, she screamed from kitchen, slow tempo, slow down. So parents' involvement is absolutely necessary, and unfortunately I can't give you an answer, because if parent is not prepared for that, without this understanding what's going to happen for the exam, you can't really convince them otherwise, because their friend's child did this exam and that's why I want my child to do this exam. If they can, then my child can do too. That's their understanding of how it works, but it's not the case.
Irina, hi Irina, this is Jian. I have your Tales book, book one. I'm wondering if that might be a first edition because I purchased it years ago. Has there been any changes in your books the past maybe 8 years or so?
So my last edition was published in 2017, but I can assure you it's not huge changes. It could be some little changes in the layout. There could be some soundtracks added, but the order, the sequence is the same. I am working on publishing a new version, and hopefully it will happen this summer. I'm not sure, but I hope so, because the designer of the book is currently in Ukraine, displaced from his home and can't work. He doesn't have his computer, so it's all stopped in the middle. But I really hope I'll be able to finish it with him in a few months. And this version will be quite different. Again, not with the sequence of uh, concepts, but layout, design, um, child friendliness, because when I created this curriculum, I still don't have technical skills, so it's been typed in the Word document, and it still is. So I'm working on professional design right now. But even even with Word document, teachers successfully use it with children, and it seems like children like it, and I use it with my students. So if you order it for a student, you will see the difference if you
Okay.
order new, but it's not that big of a difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's nice to meet you,
I
Jean.
know. It's been a while.
We know each other on Facebook probably for 10 or more years, but I never
2000
seen.
2014, I think. Yes.
Other
All right.
questions? Anyone? Please go ahead and unmute and ask. I know you work with young children, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, but I mean, it seems like this curriculum is just so wonderful, especially for young children. I mean, how young have you started, and like, who was your youngest student, and is there any advice you would give to teachers and parents as to when is too early or to start with piano?
My youngest student was 3.5 years old. It was Audrey that you saw in a couple of videos doing ear training. And actually, when she came first to me, she just turned 3, and I turned them away because the child wasn't ready. But she started going to preschool, and in 6 months they came again, and I worked with her, and I noticed she could follow my directions, and she knew some letters and some numbers, and she could keep her focus. So I always do evaluation of a child, especially the young one, because there could be millions of children of the same physical age, but their developmental stages are all different. And that's why it's very important. So the main criteria is that the child can keep the focus for at least 20 to 30 seconds on one task. They can count up to 5 at least. They know some letters, but sometimes they learn letters as they learn, sometimes they learn notes quicker than letters or at the same time. But also they have to be able to follow directions, because you know, every family uses different parental approaches, and some children just feel that they can do whatever they want at the lesson. And if they can't follow my direction, if I tell them to do one thing and they do the opposite, or not, or don't even hear me, there is no reason to start. So we wait until they develop a little bit. I talk to parents and explain them what they need to work on, and they need to talk to children, and they can come again to me in a couple months or 6 months or in a year, and we can do another evaluation and see if child is ready. So it's with the youngest ones. But usually I had a very good success with 4 and 5 year olds. They are so fun and natural and just amazing. I love that age.
How long was Audrey's lesson?
So when we start with young beginners, let's say 3.5, 4 years old, we start with 2 lessons a week, 30 minutes long. And since the second semester, after 4 or 5 months, we moved to 45 minutes lessons twice a week. Since about 10 years ago, I stopped taking new students on the condition of having 1 lesson a week. Because for a child, 1 week, it's like a year for us adults. they don't only forget what they learned on the lesson, especially if parents are not involved, but they learn bad habits. And instead of moving ahead at the next lesson, we have to sit and reteach them the previous concepts. And again, at the initial interview, I explained to parents how important to have twice a week lessons with young children. Sometimes I can even tell them, let's start with twice a week lessons. And if you feel it's not feasible for your family, in 6 months or a year, we'll go to one lesson a week. And you will probably not believe it. I had few families who told me I would prefer a once a week lesson, and I agreed. 2-3 weeks later, 100% of those families called me back and asked to go back to twice a week lesson because they could immediately feel the difference. Depending again on child's ability to concentrate and focus, sometimes I keep this 45 minutes for a couple years or move in like 9 months or in a school in 1 year to 1 hour lessons. Approximately when they turn 10, 11-year-old, by this age, most of the children develop critical and analytical skills and thinking. And at the same time, I feel it's safe to have them, and especially in middle school, they become super busy. So then we go to once a week lesson, 1 hour. But some still want to have twice a week lessons, and I don't mind. I mean, they definitely progress much faster. Of course, I have some students who come from other states, and I have to do it once a week because they have to drive between 2 to 6 hours. This little Catherine actually, they lived 6 hours away. So they would come, would drive on Saturday morning for 6 hours. We would have a lesson on Saturday, Sunday night, and we would have another 1 hour lesson on Sunday morning, and they drove all the way home for 6 hours. So that's a dedication. Yes. But it's really, yeah, now I have the opportunity to select families who would be committed, but every teacher can. If teacher is agreeable with parents and says, I will do whatever you need, the parents soon become very demanding, asking teacher to choose pieces of their liking and not what teacher wants the student to learn. And that's where really disrespect starts. So before you take a student in your studio, they have to agree with your rules, with your policy, with your guidance, and trust you. I tell them, remember that your child's interests are my first interest. I don't want to hurt your child in any way. That's why you have to trust me. If they don't, they have to look for another teacher, because I'm not gonna follow their requests knowing that it's gonna hurt their child, because they can't know that. They don't have that education or experience to know how the child can be injured in piano lessons. They don't realize it. And that's where education is very important.
I'm just so curious if, in addition to supporting their children and exposing them to music and listening to music and everything you spoke about, do you? I'm just curious if you ask them to sit through their practice in the early stages, like every time they practice, the parent in your studio is expected to be there with the child.
Absolutely. You know, there is a study that even an adult leaving the studio will forget 75% of what happened in the studio. Talking about 4 or 5 year old children, they forget 100% of everything that was in the studio. So I explain it to parents, and they not only sit in the lesson and record on iPads, usually iPads or iPhones, they record the lesson or fragments of the lessons, and then they watch it themselves and help their children to practice at home, either showing them short videos or reminding them, because kids can't remember. But this technology, even though it hurts us in many ways, but it's also very helpful in many ways, even in lessons. So it helps me to save time on writing down the assignments because I can just talk and they record it. And it helps them to work with their children at home. And they have to understand it's their commitment, it's parents' commitment. If they committed to buy an expensive instrument and pay for the lessons, they have to commit their time too. If in case of emergency, parent cannot be in the lesson, then still this recording of the lesson helps in many ways. First of all, it helps parents to understand what they did, and it helps me in our time to avoid all kind of accusation when I have to touch students' hands or touch their shoulders or their back. I personally never experienced any problems with that, but I do know teachers who did, especially male teachers who work with young children. They have to be especially careful with that. And recording the lesson on iPad really helps with that too.
Okay, we're approaching the end of our time. So last chance, last call, as they say. Anyone else would like to come in with a question? Please feel free.
I did notice that someone that doesn't speak English very well is texting, and she'd like to have her questions through text. I guess she's going to give you the question or something.
Sure,
But if you can see those notes.
I think I see that in the chat. I can read what she wrote, which this is Mina. Thank you, Mina, for your question. So her question is, some students have a good memory, so they try not to read the sheet music properly. I think we've all seen that. In particular, boys show this tendency a lot. They are tired of looking at the sheet music. How do you teach and approach such students who kind of play by ear, but maybe not in the same way of playing by ear that you were discussing before? Any thoughts about that, Irina?
It's a big question. I don't think I can give a short answer to that, but there are a lot of skills involved. First of all, with help of Tales of a Musical Journey, I start teaching kids to read notation from the very first lessons. Again, not with the symbols right away, but learning the principles of how notes relate to each other, developing their ear, playing very many little tunes, little songs in the book, just sight reading them, not staying long on the same piece. That's why most of the pieces in both Book of Tales are not longer than 8 measures, or I think there are a couple of 12 measures. But first pieces are even 4 measures long, and they learn one note at a time. So I usually never have problems with children reading notation, and it's not because they're tired, it's because they don't want to look there. It's because they don't remember the notes, and it's easier for them to look at their fingers than in the book. And notation, reading notation, it's a very complex intellectual activity that involves visual memory, audio memory, physical memory, and even remembering the values of the rhythmical memory. So many things that have to come along together. So it's very important to teach it properly, not to have the problems later. And never stop sight reading new material, even if they work toward the competition or recital on harder pieces. I also always have them to sight read and learn quickly, either easier etudes or duets or easier pieces for fun, like pop songs or little jazz pieces. So it always have to be a combination. Of course, there are some tricks I can do to improve children's sight reading, but certain exercises, but I can't cover them today, right now. But I do talk to the teachers. We learn that in pedagogy courses.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, looking at the clock, we're really coming to the end of 3 very rich hours. I can't speak for everyone, but just speaking for myself, the time for me went by. I didn't even feel, it didn't feel like 3 hours to me. I was just so engrossed and so engaged and so interested in everything you shared with us. It was incredibly enjoyable and so informative, and I feel inspired, and I've learned so much myself. I just wanted to take a moment to, of course, thank everyone who joined us today. And of course, thank you, Irina, for a wonderful, engaging presentation. And I did start recording, not from the very, very first minute, but as soon as Irina asked, I did start recording to the cloud. So usually I get an email from Zoom, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes after the meeting is over. So I put my email in the chat and I can put it in there again. It's omri.chimron@csueastbay.edu. And if you, with Irina's permission, I'm happy to send a link to the recording. Obviously, I would imagine, please do not share this publicly or post it, but it's for your own education and enjoyment only. And yes, just thank you so much, Irina. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and I hope we keep in touch and everybody reach out to you on through the website and through the social media and the other resources that you gave us. So, wow, just wonderful.
So much for inviting me, and I'm very happy to see teachers here, and I would be very happy to continue our communication through social media, and you know how to find me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I wish everybody a wonderful weekend, and we shall see each other again in similar events. Thank you, Irina, and thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.